Ask the podcast coach for January 31st, 2015. That's right, January's done.
Let's get ready to podcast.
And now we dance. Hey, it's Saturday morning. Welcome to Ask the Podcast Coach. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting. Jim is out on assignment today. I think that's what we'll officially say. Joining me is, hey, don't be fooled by cheap imitations, buddy. We have the real Brian from Profitcast. How's it going, buddy?
Good morning. How are you? I'm doing really well. How about you?
Oh, it's Saturday. It's 18 degrees. It's Super Bowl weekend. And, we can learn a lot as podcasters from Super Bowl weekend. Man, there are a lot of really bad interviews going on. I listened yesterday, and they're interviewing a guy. Here was the deal. And he says, the interviewer, Jim Rome in this case, right, renowned, I don't know if athletes are the best subject, maybe that's it. And there's a guy that played 8 years in Tampa Bay, but he grew up in Oakland. And now he's playing for Oakland. And so Jim asked him, hey, what was it like? You know, this is your hometown. What was it like when you put on the silver and the black for the first time? And I'm like, what do you really expect the guy to say? Oh, I hated it. It was, just...
Yeah. It was the worst day of my life, and I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah.
But they paid me well, so.
Yeah. When Aaron Rodgers lost that game, they actually asked him, hey, the last two possessions, you did like 3 and out and 3 and out. What were your thoughts on that? And he goes, they weren't very good. And I'm like, what do you expect the guy to say? It was ridiculous. So,
isn't that the way most of these interviews go, though? When it comes to this, man, you went out there and you lost. How do you feel right now? It's the biggest game ever, and you just blew it.
Hey, well, here's the fun thing of live.
Yeah.
Blog Talk Radio just let me know that it dropped my call.
Oh, that's so fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm going to, here, while we do, this is where I toss it to you. And you have a bit of a radio background, so fill us in on that background while I dial back in.
Fill you in on the background. Okay, man, radio. So let's see. Radio, I started that back in the 90s. And what's really funny is I actually did a little bit of radio stuff for a radio station then, but I also was in high school in the 90s. I'm dating myself now.
Okay.
But yeah, so we started our little high school radio station. I did college radio. I did, local radio in the area. Did radio in Denver, did online radio. And then radio went obsolete and jumped into podcasting. I'll tell you what, I tried to do podcasting while on radio as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know what I was doing back then. It was quite a few years ago.
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
Right.
Right then.
I feel much more at peace that she's talking to me in an English accent.
I think we should just talk like this the rest of the time.
Exactly. Speaking. When Jim told me he couldn't be here this week, I was thinking, who should I come to fill the shows? And then I was thinking about this, so I brought a little clip for you, Brian. This is why I like Brian. You ready for this?
Isn't there something missing that I normally say before the whole where passion meets profit? Let's rock it! It's going to be awesome. Let's rock it! So let's rock it! Thank you so much. Seriously, keep it going. Keep the contact up. I love it. Having a great time with this. I hope you are too. It's really exciting. Let's rock it. So let's rock it. Well, this goes to 11. Hey! Woo! Let's rock it! Too soon, man! Come on! Hey! Woo!
That was my favorite.
Hey! Woo! Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, that's funny.
I'm so excited to be here right now. I can't even tell you. Let's rock it. Oh. Well, let's rock it. He's a cool guy. So much more. It's going to be fun. Let's rock it. So let's rock it. It's going to be amazing. Let's do it. Let's rock it. This is Profitcast, and we're just getting started.
That's right. Just getting started. I love your energy, man. I was like, this guy will wake me up on Saturday. ProfitcastUniverse.com.
Did you hear the story about the Let's Rock It this week?
No, I know. I just heard you say it wasn't an accident.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. I thought it was, well, I mean, it was sort of an accident. It was one of those things where I said it the first time, and then I thought, oh, that was fun. I'll say it next week. Oh, that was fun.
Yeah.
I'll keep doing it, and then all of a sudden, I can't do a show without it.
Yeah, I can't find somewhere I came up with personal podcast coach. I don't know where. It wasn't planned, wasn't written down, and it was kind of the same thing. I was like, yeah, that kind of explains what I am. So it's one of those things you just kind of keep it going, and there we go. Well, hey, we do have open phone lines, by the way. We have jingles and everything, Brian. Isn't it fun? That's right. 347-850-8007. 347-850-8007. We'll talk about whatever the heck you want. You get your podcast questions answered live. We've got the chat room. If you go out to askthepodcastcoach.com/live, we are there every Saturday morning at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. And we've got our typical cast of characters out there. And if I haven't said in a long time, I really appreciate the chat room. And we always just chat it up here. And one of the things that I got into is it a tiff or a discussion? I haven't figured this out yet. I know Paul Culligan brought this up a while ago about do you need a website for your podcast? And I think we'll all agree that you need a website. This is where you get into that. Can I podcast without a website? You can, barely, but you could. But for me, the thing that I see, and this is one of the things that I try to coach people through, is there are a couple things that will kill your podcast. Number one, top of the list, babies. Babies will kill your podcast. Number two, I've seen a lot of people get hung up on the intro music, where they just can't find that right. And I understand that you have a vision, but it's a bummer when, somebody's gone through, they've spent money on microphones and they've got the logo, they can't find the right music. And I'm like, oh, come on. Mark Maron, when he started off, was playing AC/DC. And like, excuse me, guys, but that's illegal, And then the other one is the website. And so I was trying to coach this guy, I'm like, hey, what's that first episode about? Let's talk about that first episode. And he's interested in banners and themes. And so the question was, he was kind of, and maybe I think I misunderstood what he was saying, was he was saying, will a better theme build a better audience? And I was like, I don't, in the long run, I don't know. This is where I thought I would throw it out to the group today. Do you go to a website for a podcast, Brian? I know I just realized I just found a new podcast in iTunes. I've never been to the guy's website, ever.
When I go to websites, it's if I know that the person has good content, or maybe they've said, hey, go to the website and check this out. So any kind of a call to action, if there's a link there or something like that. But, or the other thing, too, is if there's really good show notes, I'll go there just because sometimes I'll be listening and I'll be like, wait, what was that? And I'm going to go look it up and that kind of thing. So, but other than that, no. I mean, if even I don't even write that good of show notes just because I don't enjoy writing very much. Yeah, I mean, it's like bullet points. Daniel and I did that crossover episode last week or whatever it was, and then it was funny because I made a little joke in there saying that his show notes would be, extensive, and then mine would be, just this little leaflet or something kind of thing. And so I went over to his show and I'm like, see, this is why I go to his site, because I'm reading all this stuff and this is fantastic, but I wouldn't go to my own. But yeah, so there you go. I just learned something right there.
Yeah, it's well that, and speaking of Daniel J. Lewis, we're going to take a 10-second tangent and then we'll come back to websites. Okay. Before I forget, Daniel J. Lewis today, guest on the New Media Show. So when we get done at this show,
Nice.
we'll all run over to New Media Show, and he will be the guest over there. But yeah, when I got to interview Pat Flynn, and actually when I read his book, and how he got his whole, I forget what his first thing. It was on some sort of training for security people, or I forget what his original gig was, that he found his ebook and everything like that. But he had just written, it was to pass a test for drafting or whatever, architecture, something like that. And he had written all these notes in the cloud that he was going to use to pass this test. And that's what then became his blog, which then went gangbusters. And, he's guy's making $9,000 in a month without even trying back then. And so to me, when I look at that and I hear that, I'm like, okay, so maybe that's how I should write show notes. It's like that somebody could use the detail for a test. And I'm like, but that's, you said my favorite phrase. I hate writing. And it's like, it's for me, if I was smart, I would do them first, right? I would write my show notes, not so much so I could read them, but just so I can organize my thoughts. and then fire up the mic, go from there, and that way I've already got those done. Because I don't know about you, but I do them last when I'm tired.
Oh yeah.
It's it's pushing on 1 a.m. or whatever it is, or I'm up against a deadline, and it's like and it's always no fun. But
so let me ask you this though, like if you're doing show notes so there's a couple ways to look at show notes. Is that having that detailed aspect is very helpful for the end user, right? But then again, if you do too detailed of show notes, what's the point of listening to the episode?
Yeah, that is I have two schools of thoughts on that. It depends on what you're doing. I mean, on one hand, and that's the whole fun of podcasting. It's all just opinion. There's no, in the immortal words of Cliff, right? Don't should me. But on one hand, I go, well, if I still gave them value and they read it, isn't that mission accomplished? But on the other hand, you want those download numbers to go up.
That's true.
Oh, I don't know how that works that way, but I can see in the chat room everybody is saying how the love of show notes is being expressed in big bold letters.
Yeah. See, this is when we hire our VAs to do something like this.
Yeah. Well, there's a guy, I don't know his name. I just found his blog. I think he's called the Show Notes Guy, and I knew that was a matter of time before somebody came up and said, "I'll do those for you." I'm just waiting for somebody to do it that doesn't want $150 an episode or something like that. It's a little crazy at that. We do have a question it just rolled off the screen. Backstage Pass? Did you have a podcast called Backstage Pass?
Yeah. Hey, Joe, what's going on, man? Hey, so, I did have that was my second official podcast, and I interviewed Christian hip-hop artists. Actually had a really good time doing that, but there was a number of reasons that kind of went off. It was unfortunately the industry itself was very difficult to work with. Music in general, legality. Speaking of royalty music, in the beginning, we got to a point where you had to get permission from the artists, which was good. But then if they were signed to record labels, then here you are working on.
Yeah,
that was a nightmare. Oh yeah, but it was hard. It was hard getting them scheduled, and it was hard growing the thing, and it was hard working with people, and then there was some division in the industry and stuff too. And that's the unfortunate thing when you mix passion in music with what's the nice term of the music industry? What's a nice
weasels?
Term for that? Weasels?
I think David Letterman referred to them as weasels. Yeah.
It's interesting, but no, I mean it was a good run though. It was one of those moments. I loved it, and I wish it was something I could. Yeah.
Well, and that's the other one. I mean, that's a classic reason why people just stop podcasting is it becomes too hard. The pain of creating an episode is, you're like, it's such a pain in the rear end that way.
Well, and that goes along with interviews too, because you got to schedule people, and that's why there's a lot of interview shows, right? And people are starting to find out, man, this is tough trying to keep people engaged on time so that I actually have a show.
Yeah, I've got there's a new. We were talking crowdfunding last week, and there's a new service came out called Joyride, and they're like, if you don't, they have some huge claim like if you don't make $1,000 a month, blah blah blah, this. And I'm like, oh, hold on, time out, wait a second. But I'm not sure what country they're in, but trying to find a time when we can get together. It's scheduling can be, even if you have schedule once or appoint letter, Calendly or insert your favorite. You're still. Time zones especially, and I've had a lot of about the time you think you got it right, that's when you're like, you show up at 5 o'clock and you're like, where are they? And then they show up at 6 and you're like, what happened? They're like, oh, I'm on Central Time and you're on Eastern, and it's always fun. So we did a couple things. This is where last week, Brian, we're going to talk to you in a bit about as well. I consider your podcast a journey podcast. We'll talk about that. But one of the journeys we did last week was we gave something away. I did a survey of my audience. I asked them, here's basically things about my show, in this case the School of Podcasting, and I gave them, and I wanted something really to entice people to take the survey, and it worked. I actually had over 100 people sign up for that, and it's not easy to get people to take a survey. And we gave a year subscription to, in this case, Henry Jasper, who was number 67 that Jim pulled out of a hat. And Henry had sent us a little clip, so we're going to play that.
Nice.
Hey, Dave, this is Henry from the soon-to-be-launched Voices That Carry podcast, and I'm just calling in to say thank you. I took your survey and won a free year at the School of Podcasting, and I could not be more excited. Dave, thanks for your generosity, not only with this free year of subscription, but also with the hours and hours of free content that has been so helpful and inspiring to me. Keep up the awesomeness, and I can't wait to get started. Thanks, man.
And one of the things I've heard you talk about, Brian, is, kind of have that mentality of serving your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, when I got that back in, I was like, okay, kind of mission accomplished kind of thing, because I could hear the excitement in his voice, and he's all like the soon-to-be released, and I was like, so, if you get a chance to give something to your audience, I vote give something to your audience, because that was a lot of fun. And the other thing that happened last week is both Jim and I, where are you located at, Brian?
Colorado.
Yep. Do you know if there are any kind of like podcaster meetups out there?
No, see, this is the problem with Colorado, is that there are, I think Greg Hickman's in Denver, but that's about all I know. I've been trying to find people in Colorado.
Yeah, because I started up a Cleveland podcaster meetup, and Jim has one out in Omaha, and so we actually got some feedback from Michael Ray, who's a regular caller to the show, and here was his feedback. Mike loves to do production.
Hey, Dave and Jim.
Or Brian.
Just a little information for you. We had a meeting in Omaha, podcasters type user group, and it was really a lot of fun and really a lot of good information. People kind of pinned me to the mat on what my avatar was. I was kind of acting like a slippery pig at a county fair, but they got me nailed down. So where I kind of understand where I need to be. So anyway, I advise people, if you're out there, if there's some kind of group, join that, because what I learned from Jim Collinson is how to use Skype on my board. And I'll tell you something, I was so excited when I got there, I thought, I think I scared half of them, because I was just talking so fast, and I think Jim kind of looked like one of them poodles with his head kind of kilt sideways. Didn't really know what I was, where I was going to go next, but I made my first international Skype call to Germany to the guy that did this intro here, John Paul, and he can be reached at mrmush2014@gmail.com. That's kind of one of his names there, and which led me to another podcast to help me learn. I have ADHD, so this.
Join the club.
I was listening to a lot of those podcasts, and it's like, they're kind of like, they're kind of clinical, they're kind of clank, clank, clank. But this one called Distracted by a guy named Mark Patey, Patey. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But they had a lot of fun, had a lot of good information and a lot of fun. They wasn't all sticks in the mud and whatnot. So I see where, ADHD can be up sometimes at the same time, but anyway, I'm going to leave on this one exit here on this, he did something about a bus stop, but it's him talking to some guy, or himself or something. So anyway, have a good day, and thanks a lot, Jim. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
There you go. So let's see.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Okay.
Could you tell me where the nearest bus stop is?
You're standing right next to it, sir.
I hadn't noticed because, well, frankly, my eyes are still closed.
Maybe you should try opening your eyes.
Maybe you should try shutting your mouth. Okay, gotta go. Here
Okay.
comes the bus.
So people are having fun. That's the.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, a couple weeks ago, Michael Ray was like, microphone schmicrophone. What's that? He was brand spanking new, and now he and his buddies are making all sorts of
He's doing voices
vocal
now.
intros and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Voices. We could do the rest of the show like that.
This would be great. Yeah, think if I can do that guy.
Excellent.
We should have some fun, man.
Well, that's the one thing I like about your show. That when I played the clip when you went like, whoo, I was like, all right, this guy is having fun. Yeah.
I tell you what, when I get behind the microphone, it's just like all bets are off. So, well, one of the things I always tell people, because they're, here he's saying they're trying to have him nail down his avatar, and that was one of the things at the Cleveland Podcasters meetup. Somebody said, what if you don't know? Like, what if I'm just starting out? Mhm.
You know, and I was like, you know what? I said, well, if you just want to get in and have fun, you know, there are a lot of podcasters, Mignon Fogarty, who's been on Oprah, and Callie Lewis, who does GeekBrief.tv, who's going to have this huge presence at the National Association of Broadcasting and New Media Expo. She's got a whole big booth for her. It's a whole video podcast thing. Both those people, that's their second podcast. They didn't like strike gold with their first one. And I'm like, you know, get in and, you know, you started off with your backstage thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's not a big deal if you start over. And so the thing I liked about ProfitCast is when you came on, you kind of came on and said, hey, for the record, right now at least, I'm not like, I'm here to learn about, you know, we're going to figure out how to monetize your podcast, but I haven't figured that out yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was the coolest thing because you're just so open and just transparent. And that's kind of been, your podcast has been just kind of the journey of this, okay, talking to experts and trying things yourself. And that's the one things I really like about it. I always tell people, you know, you don't have to be the expert. There's a great example. Her name is Joanna Penn. She does a show called The Creative Pen. And when she started, she wanted to figure out how to self-publish a book. And so she did kind of like you did. She went out and interviewed all these experts. And it's interesting because now at different conventions about writing and such, they now ask her because now she is the expert on, you know, self-publishing and things of that nature. So, yeah, so you've kind of been doing a little retrospective on your show lately, kind of thinking back and like, so what are your thoughts at this point? You're I should know this. How many episodes in are you?
32.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been doing it a while. You've got a little
about 7 months now.
Yeah. So
That's
if you were
crazy.
to, yeah, any thoughts looking back at this point that like, I should have done this, or I'm glad I did this, or?
You know, see, that's the hard question right there is, should I have done something different? I would have to say no, simply because I wouldn't have known, you know, to do anything different at the time. So, you know, I'm looking back there, what was it, episode 30, 2 weeks ago, I was kind of, you know, I was a little down on myself. And it was so funny because I had a few people writing me in later and saying, man, this was a bummer of an episode. And I'm thinking, oh, shoot, that wasn't the intention. You know, the intention's just to be real and honest, like, okay, this is the struggle I'm dealing with right now, as we're always looking at we should always be looking at our podcasts and making sure that it's delivering value, because if it's not, then shut it down kind of thing, you know? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was kind of in that moment going, is this delivering value? I don't know. I need to make sure. And, you know, I thought it was, but was curious just to know if people were resonating. So I was asking a lot of those questions and then trying to figure out if I was on the right page as far as the direction. I had interviewed, obviously, a lot of people over 2014, kind of the end of that, and I was going, I don't really want this to just be an interview show. I never did in the first place. So I said, well, let's do a few new things. I'll still do interviews, but let's mix things up a little bit. Let's try some things out. And interestingly enough, that episode, as much of a downer as people said it was, I got a lot of feedback. So it was probably some of the most interaction I ever received.
Well, see, I like
fascinating.
I like that episode because, without sounding completely cliche, it was real. You know what I mean? Yeah. For me, it's weird. I do a weight loss podcast, and the reason people like it is because I keep losing weight and then finding it. And I hear a lot of people go, I'm glad to see I'm not the only person that struggles with this stuff. And so when you did that episode, I'm like, all right, I'm glad I'm not the only one that's sitting there going, you know, is it list if I quit tomorrow, would they, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I like that aspect, that I was like, all right, here's a guy that I can, you know, I instantly related to that. Then when you can relate to the host, you know, there's that another block in building that bridge of that relationship that people, you know, are like, oh, okay. And, you know, the fact that you tried something new, I thought that was cool. And since he's in the chat room, Ryan, you are now a button. You always have to remember,
no one will punch you in the face,
you know, if you try something new. No one will. So Ryan has been promoted to soundbite button.
Love
now.
it.
Yes. So.
Hey, hold on real quick. There was a question for me about what kind of cans I'm using. AKGs, 240s. That's what I love.
There you go. Is there like a standard when you were bopping around the different radio stations? Is there like a standard, like everybody uses the same headphones kind of? I know a lot of times radio stations they use RE20s for the mics, and you know,
RE20s and the Shure's the SM7s? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've used one of those. Those are the mics, but when it comes to headphones, they're all over the place. But you know, I heard about Leo using these, and I got these years ago. and I can have these on 8 hours a day and forget they're on, kind of thing. They're so comfortable.
What are they?
AKG 240s. Yeah, here we go.
Any?
And put it up to the. There you go. Can you see it right there?
There you go.
Yeah. Is that even legible?
I can see the AKG, but you're asking the wrong guy. My vision is blurry.
Yeah, the K240 is the model. K240.
So,
fantastic.
This is where it's fun because it'll take about 2 seconds for somebody in the chat room to throw a link to Amazon and.
Yeah. Well, since I can't be an affiliate, go for it.
Right. Exactly. So, well, we should mention, of course, as always, we do have open phone lines.
Yes.
Quickly get in line before they fill up. That number is 347-850-8007, 347-850-8007. Of course, we're at askthepodcastcoach.com/live, which is the one thing that I'm still not used to. When you're doing something live, people jump in the middle, and you're like, oh, that's why you kind of have to keep repeating yourself, and that whole 9 yards. So we do talk occasionally about the news, and I thought this was interesting. Did you, as a radio person, did you ever listen to Howard Stern?
Oh yeah, periodically. I got to tell you, I didn't get into his style very much, but I listened for him for the sake of trying to learn from his techniques. Periodically.
That's it. I had a free month when I just got a new car recently, and it just expired. I'm kind of like, oh, because like he interviewed Barbara Walters, and I learned more about Barbara Walters that I'd never heard of before. And it wasn't, he was very respectful. He didn't ask her about sex or whatever, which you would kind of expect. So it was very respectful, and just like her sister and her daughter, and like basically her daughter kind of said Barbara Walters wasn't the best mom, and she kind of politely said, you know what, you weren't exactly the best daughter either. And I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't expect that. But there was a comedian that used to be basically in the background writing jokes for him, and he would chime in. His name was Artie Lang.
Mm-hmm.
And Artie has been on Mad TV. He's, a stand-up comic, goes around. But Artie's a troubled dude. He basically was a heroin addict. He got more or less fired from the Stern Show because he would, heroin does nasty things to your body, and he would basically be sleeping on the job, literally on the radio, he'd be sleeping. And they made a gag out of it. But when he got let go, he tried to kill himself. He stabbed himself multiple times. The good news is he's turned himself around, and he's gotten on other radio shows. I know he had a radio show or a TV show on the Dish Network with another comedian because he's a really big sports guy. And to finally get to the point, Artie now has a podcast. And you're like, well, okay, a comedian has a podcast. That's really not news, Dave. But here's the news. He was offered a show on satellite radio and turned it down. And that's when I went. And so what he's doing is, I don't know if he has anything free, but he's charging $7 a month, and they do like 2 shows a week. And he said he just loves the freedom. He goes, not that there wasn't freedom on satellite radio, but I think the fact that you still kind of have to follow a format, traffic and weather on the 10s or whatever that kind of stuff is. So I thought that was interesting. I'm tempted to go over and subscribe just to hear, number one, just to reverse engineer and see what technology they're using to handle the whole. Because you get an RSS feed that you can throw in that, and that's the only thing that I saw that I was like, oh, he's got to be pulling his hair out because he's not a super technical guy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's his page has, if you're on an Android phone, here's how you subscribe to the podcast. If you're on an iPhone, so they have all this list of helping his audience get into the technology, because it's not just go to iTunes or go to podcasts or whatever and type Artie Lang, because this is all premium stuff. And I thought, oh, there's the good news is he's making $7 a pop for each person, plus it allows him to. He said the reason he liked it is, number one, he controls the schedule. It's still going to allow him to do his stand-up, which is what he loves, but yet he has the freedom of he doesn't have to do it 5 days a week or whatever the heck they wanted. So I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. Another person jumping into the pool. And Pauly Shore, I've yet to even listen to that one. So speaking of weasels.
He kind of looks like one.
Yeah, I see where Pauly Shore has started a podcast, and that's where back in the day it was me and Gary Leland from Podcast Pickle, and Paul Culligan from Paul Culligan and the Podcast Report, and Rob Walsh from Libsyn. I used to do a show called Today in Podcasting, and it was kind of interesting because like news like that would be news, and then everybody started launching podcasts, and it really it's like, okay, great, whatever. Singer, maker of sewing machines, launched a podcast or something, and it was like, yeah, okay, that's not really news anymore. So that was I saw that and I was like, well, that's kind of different. But what let's see, do I have? I use Soundbite for all the clips here.
Yeah,
and
that's a great program, by the way.
I thought I would put you on the spot, except I don't know. Here we go. And you can cheat with your phone. We'll do one of these.
And now it's time for a last 5 and 5. What were the last 5 podcasts you listened to?
So, Brian, do you remember what were the last 5 podcasts you listened to?
Okay.
And if you can tell me a little bit about them.
Well, so this is kind of funny a little bit because I don't know if you guys knew that I was doing Arrow Squad and then Central City Underground is kind of my fan podcasts for Arrow and the Flash. Well, I stopped doing the Central City Underground podcast, just, the whole laser focus thing?
Mm-hmm.
Focusing and yeah. Anyway, I had to let something go, so that was the one I had to let go. But anyway, I was listening to that one to see what the new hosts were doing, so that's one of them. I listened to Eventual Millionaire because I was trying to find something, and I can't remember what I was looking for.
Is that Jamie Tardy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she had somebody on there, and oh man. Anyway, I can't remember who it was. I've been all over the place. This whole week's been insane for me, but that was one. And gosh, those are the 2 I listened to this week. I actually went on a little bit of an information diet for a while because I was listening to way too many podcasts and I was not getting anything done, kind of thing. If you know what I mean.
Well, that, and I've done the same thing. I used to subscribe to a lot of comedian podcasts, and that same thing where like value, like at the end, because I'm kind of expecting, call me weird, if I turn into a comedian podcast, I'm kind of expecting to laugh. I mean, that's the goal. And they're just doing interviews of people I don't know and care about, and I kind of went, yeah, next to that. Mike Dell in the chat room, boy, I forgot about this one. Starbucks came out with a podcast.
Wow.
And it was literally, let me imitate the Starbucks. This is our French roast, blah, blah, blah. And it was literally like this. You hear...
Oh, that's good.
And, like, you'd hear them, like, sipping the coffee. Almost like the guy in Silence from the Lambs. You're like... Yeah, exactly.
Beans.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, okay, you guys do know this is audio? Now it would have been interesting to, like, I don't know, maybe behind the scenes of, like, whatever happened to Juan Valdez.
Yeah.
Or,
hello, Clarice. That's what happened to Juan. It's funny because I roast my own coffee, and I got somebody said I should start a coffee podcast, with roasting my own, and I'm thinking, what would I do? Like, sit here and sip coffee? Exactly. You're sitting here going like,
this is good stuff.
Like chocolate-covered blueberries or something.
I need to test this out. I see where Dan Kramer in the chat room, jinglepalette.com. I'm going to click that link as we speak. And I think I tried this once. Is it pink? Yes, I did try this before. And I remember there was something about it that confused me. Something with the timer where it kept trying to. But yeah, I remember that. That actually is pretty cool. Now the problem I have with this show is that runs on obviously your PC, and I have the octopus of cables that are running around to produce this show. I couldn't play Jingle Palette on this machine because that's where Brian is, so I can't send sound out to this, and then so if Brian's going to hear those, hence why I have the iPad, so I'd have to have. That's why I need something that kind of works on the iPad. So it goes into that, and then I can send that along with my voice to Brian. You get that whole feedback loop basically going on when you start to do that, and then I was listening to Mike over at podcasthelpdesk.com. He actually went the route of having 2 sound cards in his PC, so you can basically say send it out of this one, but go back into that one, and that way you're not having that whole weird feedback loop. And speaking of weird feedback loops, it's time to play the jingle again.
Yes.
And Brian, if you're new to this, 347-850-8007. this is where the audience looks at their watch and goes, oh, you know what? 347-850-8000. If I am going to call, I should probably do it soon. So usually about 20 after, where the lines just light up. And
you were going to ask me to give the number, though, and I'm thinking, let's see, 911. Shoot, I can't remember.
411.
Yeah, 411. Either way.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your Arrow podcast. Now, how do you? I was thinking about this the other day. How do you do a podcast about a TV show that's not just on this week's episode?
You talking about the recap style?
Yeah.
Well,
what is your style on a TV show?
You know what? I love getting crazy about it. Okay. So here's the interesting thing. I did do a Big Bang Theory podcast last year, and my co-host loved the recap style. And I just kind of sat there and I don't really know how to respond to this because it was kind of more just telling everybody what just happened, and I'm thinking they just watched it, so that's not working. But no, with Arrow, it's called Arrow Squad, and we've been doing this now for almost 2 years. But Kevin Batchelder actually is my co-host. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. The podcast overlord is what he goes by. But we get together and we basically we've got our notes from the show, and then we just start talking about them. It's more like topical kind of content rather than just recapping the episode. And with a show like Arrow, there's so much going on all the time because they're revealing something new to us each week. There's a little bit of the nods to the comics periodically. Not as much on Arrow as it is now on Flash. Flash is going very comic book heavy. But it's fun. It's just discussing what just happened. And then, of course, you've got your little cliffhanger at the end of the episode, too, and speculations, and then we have a lot of our community is always typing stuff into the Facebook groups, going crazy there and throwing out things and sending us feedback. And so that's fun.
Now, when you're watching the show, are you doing anything like on Twitter or, are you guys kind of meeting online, or is it just you all watch separately and then get back together later? Or?
We watch separately. We thought about doing the live thing, but I don't know. I mean, live TV watching is not as in,
Yeah.
I'll get onto the CW site because they put it up for streaming 3 hours after it broadcasts.
Nice.
So it's beautiful. Yeah, so I just get on and watch it there, and hopefully they're getting stats that, yes, there are people watching on your site. I would assume they are. I just take my notes and go from there. I get pretty crazy and start posting stuff in the Facebook group at that point.
There you go.
But we do have a Facebook group which has been phenomenal for this community. Now, Twitter's good too, but Facebook's been awesome for this.
This sounds weird. Is it public or private?
It's a public group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know I've had some people say if you make it private, you get more interaction. And I'm like, but because the thought is, if you have to jump through a hoop to get to it, that it appears more valuable as opposed to, anybody can get in. And I was like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, that's one of those where, don't should me kind of thing. I was like, you can do whatever you want. I'm like, I get the concept, but I'm like, if the idea is to get a bunch of like-minded people in one area, why put up a hurdle? Unless you're, charging for it or something like that. But, yeah, Facebook groups are awesome. I tried a couple different things. I've tried forums. I've tried this and that, and then finally, my audience just said, "Look, we're kind of already in Facebook. Why not just make a Facebook group?" And it's because everybody's on their phone. That's the other thing. They're getting all the notifications on the phone, and they're chiming in, and that just creates a great funnel for future content. I know today, I forget the name of the. There's there's three of them. There's Ringer, there's Cast, and PodClear, I think, is the people I have a discussion with today. And a lot of those I find through my Facebook group because people go, "Dave, have you ever heard of this? What are your thoughts?" And I'm like, I have no thoughts because I've never heard of it. So you get those like-minded people. I mean, sure, in your case especially, here you have people who have it is laser focused. We're talking about Arrow. So you found those like-minded people, and where you can just completely geek out on the theory and comparing it to the comic book and things like that. Whereas if you do that in a a podcast group where we're talking about high LPR 40s and things of that nature, they're like, what? The who? So
I'll tell you what, when you tap into a built-in audience, it's a lot easier. And, you've got fans out there that are already looking for something to go. We had some comments from listeners because one of the questions we would ask is, why do you listen to a podcast about a TV show kind of thing? And A lot of the response was people in my, quote, real life, surrounding me physically don't enjoy my TV show or whatever it is, and in this case, Arrow. And so it's like I went online to find a community. And I thought, man, in some ways that's actually solving a pain. You hear that, solve a pain, provide a solution for people. And I'm like, yeah, see, TV show podcasts do that. They provide that community that they wouldn't otherwise have. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you didn't sit there and go, well, I'm going to put out an Arrow podcast and hope they find me. You went and found them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people kind of go with that, if I build it, they will come kind of thing. And they will, but you got to hope that somebody over there stumbles across you, and then whereas if you go over there and of course I always say go over, join the community, and bring value first.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's one thing that I would change, that I'm sure somewhere I have episodes where I'm telling people to do an episode 0, and I was just listening to Ask Pat this morning. I kind of pop in and out of that one. That's the one from Pat Flynn, and he was talking about open rates of email, in which you're like, what does that have to do with podcasting? But he talked about having an autoresponder. If you really want people to open up your email, he goes, that first email, you have to bring the goods so that people are like, wow, that was really good. I'm going to open up every email from that guy, and I'm never going to unsubscribe. And I'm like, that theory applies to kind of the episode 0 of a podcast. And I had somebody that was saying what they're going to do is they're going to start off their first episode with, here's who I am and here's why I'm doing this podcast, and then they would bring something, and I said, love the idea, vice versa. I said, because when you first start off and you go, hi, I'm Dave Jackson, I'm blah, 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 people are kind of like, who are you? Why do I care? But if you bring them content, and they're like, wow, this is awesome, now they're wondering, who is this guy? And when you say, oh, by the way, I'm Dave Jackson, blah, 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 then it's like, oh, cool. And I said, I'm not against telling your story, because obviously stories are huge, key point serial, right? And everybody loves to hear that stuff. In fact, this week, what I always try to do is mix, and you do a good job of this too. I know when you got hit on your bike, that was like, holy cow, But you sprinkle in little things of your life throughout, and many times they're right in line with whatever you're talking about. There's a guy that does a podcast called Intro Machine, and his name is escaping me, but it's all about audio editing, and it's weird because he'll say, well, here's how compression is a little bit like life, and he'll take whatever the subject is, and he gets really philosophical at the end. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool, and I love it because it's so unique. Nobody else is doing that, and you were talking about that on your show this week, about you have to embrace you, and I think that's a big key. So do you know of anybody off the top of your head that you go, I love the way they work stories into the show that's not like just a story like Serial?
Well, okay, the first person that came to my mind, because this was one of the first podcasts I listened to, was Pat Flynn. I think he does well with integrating his personal life, and I've heard that from a lot of people over the last couple of years too, saying that, oh, Pat does a great job just being him and, telling about his story, his family, his life, and stuff like that. And so that was the first one that just popped in, just because, like I said, he was one of the first shows I listened to in podcasting. So there's a lot that I think do a good job with that.
Yeah. Mike in the chat room has a great point. He says, I do an episode 0, because you do need that first episode live. I've had people do that. They want to somehow time release the like, I'm going to get listed in iTunes and then I'm going to publish the show. I'm like, you can't do that. You have to have one episode at least live that people can click on. And Mike is saying, yeah, he'll do like an episode 0, which is what I used to do. Just like, hey, in the future, I'm going to talk about this, and in the future, I'm going to talk about that. The problem is that doesn't bring any value. Doesn't people like, well, I guess in the future I'll think about coming back in, but right now you're not inspiring me to come back. And Mike says, well, he'll throw something up there just to get the feed going and then delete it, and that's a way to go as well.
Personal stories draw. And it's amazing because sometimes, like the bike accident thing, that was just me going, oh, man, I just got hit by a car. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm going to do a show anyway, And it's amazing how many people really jumped in on that. And I didn't expect that, And then there's been other times where I've shared, like that episode 30 I was telling you about, where I was kind of all, life sucks, everything's terrible, Not really, it wasn't that bad. But, people really, for some reason, gravitated to that personal aspect. And again, I didn't plan for that. I didn't expect that. But I don't know, there's something about that human interest I think that we all like when we're listening to a show or watching a TV show or whatever it is, that kind of thing. So it's it's worth doing.
Yeah, that's the feedback I got. It's probably been a couple years ago. It was at something in New York. It might have been a New Media show. They used to do them on both coasts, and I went to one in New York. And I had a couple people that said, I like the fact that you get to the point, but I also had people say, you need to deviate from the point. Like, it's almost like a news show.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know anything about you, and wow, you're actually pretty cool and at times kind of funny, and you ought to let your freak flag fly sometimes. And I was like, okay, so I started doing that, and now people are, almost like, hey, can you get more to the point?
So this is what you do then. You have two podcasts. You've got one that's, kind of more your deviate from the point, do your thing, and then you've got one that's like 15 minutes of just pure, absolute tips.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, Yeah.
I actually thought about that. That was one of the things when I did my survey was I said, I'm thinking of doing a one-topic podcast about podcasting. Because the thing that drives me nuts is I do roughly an hour-long show, and it'll have 3 topics. Great. Now make a headline for that. Like make your title of your post is like, whatever, stats, news, service, blah, 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 newbie questions. Like, what? That doesn't, it doesn't work. So I've always kind of struggled with that. But I'm like, okay, well, what's the main meat and potatoes? And then I've always wanted to do that. So I asked my audience, I'm like, would you be interested? And some of them said no. I hate short shows. That's why I listen to your show.
Yeah.
It's an hour long, and they like it, and that whole 9 yards. So awesome. Yeah, I see in the chat room, Eric K. Johnson is a great at interviewing stories. Yeah, he's. I talked to Eric. Eric is, if you're not familiar, we do the podcast review show. Speaking of open lines, we have nobody to review at this point. So if you want to get some unbiased opinion on your show, we basically rip it apart. We shouldn't say rip it apart. We look at it and we look at it from a technical side and as well as a content side, and just kind of because Mom's going to tell you it's great. That's the bad news. She's going to, oh honey, that's the best show ever. So but I told him, I said, people keep asking me, where's the book? Like, where's the book on interviewing? I want to do an interview podcast, and there are a couple out there, but not really that fit our kind of niche. They're a little broad, and they go in all sorts of areas. I've read a couple. I told Eric, I said, man, because this is a guy that's been in radio for 30 years. He's interviewed like top names, and at Podcast Movement, he just kept dropping names. I'm like, okay, I hate you. It's like, yeah, the one time I was talking to Ted Nugent, I'm like, what? Oh, I hate you. And he's actually, I think, going to come up with a course on how to do interviews. I'm like, there you go. Because I told him to write the book, because I think I'm going to make a course easier. Because here again, podcasters don't like to write. We like to talk.
I'm with you. So one of my friends was talking about this one, and he's like, why don't you just dictate it into your computer? Let it write itself, and then go back and edit. And I thought, oh, yeah. So maybe I'll have a book coming out.
That would be cool.
We'll see.
And remember I said my audience waits till the last about 20 after they'll start calling in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here they come. Ending in 7825. You're on with Dave and Brian. What's your name and what's your question?
Good morning, Dave. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Just sitting on the side of the road so I can talk to you. So.
Awesome.
Hey.
Well, who are we talking to first?
Excuse me. Michael Ray. Sorry, crierflyer.com.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. I listened to man, I can't think of the fellow you got here, Brian, the real Brian.
Yes.
I was listening to his show, and I heard his first one, and he didn't have his website ready yet. He didn't have this and that, but he just says, "Hey, we're gonna, do what we do, and do what we do." So I thought that kind of was pretty cool, because that kind of helped me, because I'm kind of getting started and all that. And then I remember also you was getting booed at a concert somewhere. You was in a latex suit or something. It was raining. I remember some of that. And I tried to catch you, and you kept popping. But anyway, so it was just going along. And you're right. You're absolutely right with your analysis there. It's just absolutely fun. Rocking it. And that's the way I like to be. I like it all to be fun and goofy, and so. But I also had a question for you. I got my first, that call across the pond there.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to figure out, that was, and I'll tell you what, that Skype, I don't know, I used it a while back, but it was so crystal clear. It was better than my cell phone. I mean, it was really, really good,
It is amazing when you're talking to somebody across the pond, and it just sounds like they're next door.
Yeah.
It's like, man, the world gets real small real quick. You're like, holy cow. So.
Yeah, it was really crystal clear, and my brother-in-law who I was talking to across there, that down there. But I said, well, it's better than a cell phone call because now I can sit there and punch in something in here, and you can go to this website like the Music Creative. You can go there, you can look at that while we're doing this, and you can do. I mean, I'm a multitasking fool, so I can kind of do everything, But I do have a question for you, fine gentlemen.
All right.
So I got the board, I got the Skype running through, I can do a recorder and all that stuff. How do I do like where I can have a phone number? They call that phone number and it comes in there. Is it going to be another? Is it going to be like Google Voice? Is it going to be? I got Magic Jack.
Right.
I don't know if I can pipe that in there or what.
It gets tricky. Now you're already talking to somebody on Skype. Is that what you're saying? So you got a person on Skype, and now you want to take phone calls.
Right.
Okay, because the fun part is...
Right, I want to take phone calls. So.
Here's the easy way to do it. You can get a cable that plugs into the bottom of your phone, like your smartphone, and you can just plug it right into the mixer. And then what you do is you talk into the microphone so your audience can hear you, and on the other ear you've got the phone, so the person can hear you over the phone. That's the easiest way. And then that audio goes into your mixer, and then your voice and the phone go into Skype so the person on Skype can hear you. Now, the bad news is the person on Skype can't get to the person on the mixer. So actually that would work if you didn't have the person on Skype. So if you just want to take phone calls, that's an easy way to do it. Now, this is where the more people you add, the more crazy it gets. So what I do right now is let me unpin it here. I have this cute little iRig, and I know you can't see it. I have this little iRig gizmo that basically plugs into the mixer, and it goes into my iPhone so that now I can send. Now, this is where you need a little more beefier of a mixer. I can send an auxiliary out. So in this case, I'm sending, let's see, to you I'm sending both myself and Brian to the phone. And so that way Brian can talk to you. So Brian, feel free to to talk to Michael.
Yeah. No, I love that. Hello there.
Yes.
It's pretty cool.
He
This all works.
Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, so but in the process of doing that, I needed an auxiliary out. Mm-hmm. And when I did this show, I actually had to go buy a different mixer because I had to have two auxiliary outs. One to send the phone and myself and the music to Brian, but not send Brian's voice. So that's one mix. And then send Brian, myself, and the music to the phone, but don't send the phone to, you have to, they call those mix minuses, where it's everything, but, right. So right now I'm running two mix minuses, which is why my hair is gray. It's not a lot of fun. And the more you do that, it just takes a little practice. So, that's where having a co-host actually kind of throws it makes it trickier, because now you've got to send the phone to the person and the person to the phone, and you need kind of a beefier mixer. Whereas if it's just you taking phone calls, if you just want to be Rush Limbaugh, man, piece of cake. Get your cell phone, plug it into the board, and talk into both the mic and the PC at the same time. That makes life a whole lot easier. But it is tricky.
I thought maybe. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. And then
I thought maybe that I could get a Skype phone number, and I didn't know if that would solve the problem or not.
Great question.
Can you add them to a call if you're already on a call with someone else? Somebody rings in and you just add the call?
Yeah, and that's another way to do that. This is what Ice-T and Jillian Michaels do. On their Facebook page, they're like, we're doing a podcast this Wednesday. Here's an email address. If you're going to be available at this time, send us your phone number, and then they actually call them via Skype, I think, is how they're doing that. They just dial to that person's phone number via Skype.
Yeah, because Skype, you can also get your own phone number. It's like $5 a month to have your own phone number. I don't know if it's local or not or so.
Yeah.
So you spend like $10 a month or something. I thought, well, maybe if you had like 1-800 come to me or whatever the number may be, they call that. They're calling you on Skype, and then you already got just Skype, up and running. I thought maybe that might work that way,
Yeah, I would have to test that, because if you're on Skype and you get a phone call, I'm assuming there's a way that you could say add this call coming into the current Skype. Is this something where you want to take calls from the audience?
Yeah, I actually I'm always, like I said, I'm ADHD. I'm all over the place. I'm always trying to think 15 steps ahead. Right now, I know I can Skype with somebody, and right now I'm gonna Skype with John there, and we're gonna kind of go back and forth and record it, and we're just gonna have fun. We're gonna do some voices. We're gonna do this and that until we kind of figure out a way, kind of like what Brian's doing. Figure out his way and go on. But eventually, I want to try to get it to where, hey, call us here, blah blah blah. But then I see if I have to have, I got the same mixture that Jim Collinson has.
Mm-hmm.
I have an aux out, I think. So, and that's kind of in the future. Right now, I'm sad. I'm just, you don't know how happy I am to be able to Skype back and forth and record it. I was up, we got done with that Central Time about 9 o'clock. I didn't go to sleep till 2:30. And normally, I wake up 2:30 to go to work. So,
wow.
I was up almost 24 hours straight, and I kept messing with that thing and messing with it. And I finally got it, and I was just like, I got to go to bed. So,
yeah. Well, keep in mind, the more you add, the more like hurdles you have to jump through to, I always tell people, like, you're just starting out. I'm like, I wouldn't throw live into the mix yet. Let's get our feet wet, creating content, getting Skype down. And, when we first started off this show, it wasn't video. It was just myself, basically, and a call-in number. And then Jim listened and said, have you ever thought of having a co-host? And I'm like, I've never had a co-host. Let's do that. And so Jim came on board, and then I was like, maybe we should do video. And then somewhere in there, we threw in the phone number. And every time I add that, I've got to add some sort of, thing to do this. And then, if you remember, I used to try to start Skype. I used to try to start, Mixlr and Spreaker, and at the same time, and I just finally gave up. And that's why you'll hear some of the recordings where I'm like, welcome to the pre-show, because you can't start 5 things at one time unless I draw or grow a couple more, arms or something like that. So it's a little tricky. And Mike, I have a quandrum I need to discuss here. Can I do something that might embarrass you, but I want to do it because I love you and I don't want you to embarrass yourself? Is that okay?
Dude, you can embarrass me and it don't bother. I got the thickest skin. I got a thicker skin than you can imagine.
All right.
So hit me.
You're somewhat butchering Jim's last name. It's Collison. And I wouldn't want.
Oh yeah, I do that. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's not a big deal. And I know Jim doesn't care. I just don't want you to keep calling him whatever you were calling him. And I'm like, I'm just gonna stop you here, because if I was in your shoes, I would want somebody to go, hey Dave, it's not whatever it is you're saying. So.
Oh yeah. I butcher. My wife actually homeschooled kids for the longest time, and now they're in school and all this. And I said, well, while you're out and about, I can help them with the English. She goes, you do not get near my children with the way you speak, because I was raised in Missouri and Louisiana and all that stuff, and everything in Nebraska is where I moved to in '82. And I say wash instead of wash.
That's right.
And I just can't.
Do you
and it's like me and John Paul.
Do you say sandwich? That's another fun one I hear.
I say sandwich. I say sandwich.
Yes,
I say sandwich.
Yes.
You say Arkansas instead of Arkansas?
I don't know, but
yeah.
That's all right.
But when you're down in Louisiana's a whole nother. When they talk, it's just kind of like, if they kind of forget something, they say, and the French, down there, they really start going off. But when me and John Paul was talking about, we're going to do the Skype across the water here, his daughter, they speak fluent German, and they speak French, and they speak Czech. So I told him, I said, well, why don't we do some kind of little show where I say, ich möchte eine Bier bitte, which means I need a beer, please, or something like that. And then you get French in there, and then you get these kids talk. I mean, I don't know how that would work, but it would be kind of funny with some different languages. And then it also would, I mean, because right there in Germany, you got France there, Belgium, Luxembourg, Austria. You got all these different countries. It may kind of, it would be fun, I would think, But,
yeah. What are you using to record Skype?
Oh, I'm using one of them record.
A portable recorder.
What was you? Yeah, portable recorder thing. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So it goes in there to a decently high quality. Which the photographer in me says, hey, and like I told John Paul, I said, when you record something, make sure you record it in the best quality you possibly can.
Yep.
Have that backup little recorder, because that way, in case everything goes to heck in a handbasket, you got the best possible recording. And like when I take pictures with my Nikon, I'll take them in a RAW file, which is like 4 megs versus a JPEG. Which when I get the RAW file, then I can manipulate that file. I can adjust the temperature, all that stuff. With a JPEG, you're kind of stuck. So what we do is I got him recorded in Audacity and Wave, and come back out and save it on his computer as a WAV, and he can save it in Dropbox as a MP3. That way, when he ships it out, it's a lot. I mean, nobody outside that realm is going to manipulate it, so he's did everything he could to it. But he does all this stuff with just his humming and his voice, no instruments or nothing. And last night he was laying down 18 layers in Audacity, which I'm like, he's like a 2-year-old. And that's what it leads me to why I like Brian's show too, because when he was, and not saying Brian's 2-year-old, but he was having fun. He was learning as he was going, and that's what I want to do. I want to kind of get on there and learn as I go. When I make mistakes, I got the thickest skin you'll ever, you can make fun of me. As a matter of fact, I'm 6'5" with clown feet. I understand that, So I just want to have a lot of fun, because that's my life. I like, I'm ADHD. I'm gifted like a son of a gun, but I'm also distracted. The next little shiny object comes along,
that's right.
Cute,
Awesome.
But it's all a learning process. But it's just and anybody that has, and the best thing about the podcasting, anybody that has, if you're in a wheelchair and you can't move, you can't go out and do this and that, you can podcast. You can, and it doesn't take that much. Like John Paul, he's got his laptop. Matter of fact, he's using his iPhone. I got his iPhone set up with an adapter that he can use the AR2100 in it, and he can use Boss Jock, and he can use things. He's got maybe $150 in it, maybe.
Yeah, we had a caller last week that had cerebral palsy, and he said this is the way he gets out in the world, and he's
I mean, it's well, look at me. I'll be talking to somebody in Berlin, and I guarantee you that's going to get out to Czechoslovakia, because I think they got some family in Czechoslovakia and France and all that, and it can almost be converted into French. One of my niece, she speaks good French and German. I mean, they speak German and English like they can turn it on and off like a switch, and it's no big deal,
Yeah.
Me, I'm still working on English.
Well, that's one of the things that really got me addicted to podcasting. Is I had put out my first couple episodes, and the first piece of voicemail I got back was from Michael Van Laar from Nuremberg, Germany, and I went, wait a minute, it's me in the basement next to the water heater, and there's a dude in Germany listening to my stuff, and that's when I went, oh, it is so on.
Yeah.
So,
So awesome. Any other questions we can?
I want to thank Brian there for doing his stuff. He's doing a good job.
Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate it.
It's fun, but
ProfitCastUniverse.com. Check him out. Awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's just that. So anyway.
All right.
All right,
I'm
Michael. Everywhere, so.
Well, have a good weekend, buddy.
We gotta get to Michigan.
All right, we'll see you.
We'll see you later.
Have fun.
Yes.
Good drive. See you.
Yeah, the story. In a blues band, we got booed off the stage because it was raining. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, so I'm sure you have do you have any tales from the road as a musician that were fun?
I never did any of the road stuff, but I never got booed off the stage, if you can believe that. Because I think every musician needs to get booed off the stage once in their life, but man, it's not fun to go through. But no, I've got a lot of funny stories, but I don't know. I'd have to think about them.
Nothing that we can say. Yeah. No, we played one set. We opened up.
Mm-hmm.
We're playing, and they were already kind of like, get off the stage. I want to hear, Don't Fear the Reaper kind of thing. But they tolerated us. And then we get done, and I'm like, all right, cool. And I start tearing down. And they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, you're just taking a break. You're going to do another set. And then they come out. I'm like, oh, this is not going to be. And sure enough, we come up for the second set. Like halfway through the first song, it starts raining. And so now I have an audience that really doesn't want to hear me anyway. And now they're standing in the rain. They're like, yeah, get off.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Man.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I tell you what, I love performing though on stage, which is really weird because I know some people are just deathly afraid of that. But there's just some kind of insane thrill about getting up in front of thousands of people and performing on the piano.
Oh,
with a band.
Yeah, and to me, that's where the fun comes into play.
Yeah.
Right. When I see a band having fun on stage, I'm like, that's contagious. If we go back to the fact that I love the fact that you have fun in your podcast and that energy, and that's contagious. So if you want your audience to interact with you, you better interact with them. I think David Lee Roth said, the reason that Van Halen concerts are so great is, all the energy that those guys used to put out on stage. He goes, that's contagious. So if you're, I don't know if I don't think that's 100% thing, because otherwise NPR shows would all be like, all right, great. I really love that show. Awesome.
It's 10 past the hour. It's 25 degrees outside. Thank you for joining us today. I interviewed for an NPR job once.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. They're like, you're a little too energetic for this style.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. And so, yeah, I actually got offered the job anyway, but after the stuff I was told I would have to do, I kind of went, I don't think I'm going to be a good fit for you guys.
Yeah.
You'll fire me tomorrow.
There you go. Well, Brian, thanks so much for being here. Everybody find Brian. Find him over at ProfitCastUniverse.com. And where's your Arrow show at?
ArrowSquad.com.
There you go. Easy to spell, easy to remember. A good name. You can find us here every Saturday. AskThePodcastCoach.com/live. You can find me at SchoolofPodcasting.com. Use the coupon code ASK20, and that will save you on your first month at the School of Podcasting. And Jim will be back from assignments. We'll find out what the heck. He's actually doing his whole teaching intern thing, and he couldn't get out of it. So, but Brian, thank you so much for filling in.
I thought you were going to say something about him being on some kind of a secret mission, for the government or whatever. But
there you go. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks, man.
Yep. I get so nervous when I see the counter start to count down. I'm like, oh.
I know. I saw that in your eyes, and I'm like, I'm going to just shut up now.
So, but there you go. And they always wait till 20 after to call. That's a really bad habit.
That's so funny.
I need to break the audience of that.
Yeah, like once it's 20 after, no more calls. You could do that.
No, the calls are still there. If they actually want to call, and they could.
Sure.
And eventually, in 18 minutes, we'll hear Blog Talk Radio kick us off the air. But it's kind of funny. The reason I stop it at an hour, well, number one, it's an hour. I mean, that's plenty. And then number two, obviously, if I did like an hour and a half, I would need more hosting.
Yeah.
But you know what? That hour's good. And I bump it down to, I think I published this at 64 mono. So
this
I can
fun.
Get by. And I don't,
see, this is the addictive thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Live has one thing that podcasting does. Number one is the chat room. So you're getting instant feedback that you don't get from. So I can see, and you get 1/10 of the audience live that you do, via downloads.
Oh yeah.
But that instant feedback is, and you don't have to do the Google Hangout thing. You could just do, somebody said it in the chat room. You could do this with Mixler. Their chat's actually pretty cool. We used to use the Mixler chat before we switched to Chat Tango or whatever. No, we're using Chatwing. And the thing I love about this is it saves most of the chat, so I can go back through and dig out things for the show notes. And the fact that you can log in via Facebook and all that other hoo-ha stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a dig. That's the good news. The bad news is, you wake up Saturday and you're going, ooh, that pizza was awful greasy last night, and you're like, I hope I can stay in front of a microphone for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
I've had that happen, where I'm just like, Jim, you're gonna have to take over for a second, buddy.
Yeah.
Or getting haircuts now is kind of a weird thing, because I number one, I need one.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in Akron, and I'm really particular. My hair is just wavy and curly anyway, and I've had a woman who's cut my hair for like 20 years. So when I moved to Cleveland, I still go to Akron to get my hair cut. And what's weird is if I get there at 9 o'clock, let's see, they open at I think 8, but it's like I would get back to my desk at 10:30, and that's just like, no, not gonna. That would be. And then you're like, well, I could always just start the show at 11. Well, that's the whole thing. My audience is expecting me here at 10:30, so you don't have to do all the bells and whistles. So, and I don't know. I guess because people can see that I have a Mountain Dew in the background, and there's a picture of my mom and dad, and Dave apparently has a collection of water bottles going on that I keep losing them. Yeah,
I got to say, I like it though. I mean, the its personality.
Yeah.
It's kind of like everyone's like, you need a better backdrop, and I'm like, oh, I got my keyboard back there, and I've got this little finger painting that my friend did, and I'm like, whatever. It's fun.
Yeah, my goal is to I'm almost done. I have one more technical hurdle. I've been rebuilding. In fact, I owe Ryan Parker an apology. I said I would have the school podcasting moved by the end of the year, and basically I was done, and then I hit this one little struggle of saying, take this membership, and now everybody look over here, because I basically have 2 schools of podcasting going now. And once that is done, I'm going to take my whole desk, because I've actually painted myself into a corner. So, I can't fit my normal backdrop here. I didn't even think about that. So I'm going to put everything there, and then I'm going to have this big, huge space. I have this big white wall over here that I can make posters and all sorts. It's weird. Nice, posters. Yeah. Remember when you'd go to, I don't know, any place, you'd get a poster for like $3? And number one, I can't, if you type in microphone poster or radio poster, I'm like, media, it's like, you find them, and it's like somehow posters became works of art. Then it's like, $35 for a poster, and I'm like, no thanks.
You could go to the movie theaters and say, can I have one of your movie posters when I'm done, or when you're done with them, and then put up some kind of a light box, because they're the double-sided posters. You could flip them on, and it would be the see-through kind of. It'd look pretty cool.
That's an idea.
Change them out whenever you want, the new movies up.
Yeah,
it's possible.
So, we're a little behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yes.
Very good chance that the one and only Bob Heil, the man behind that microphone that you're sitting in front of, will be at New Media Expo.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that'll be fun.
Nice.
Because that guy's talk about fun stories.
I bet.
I mean, he's worked with all sorts of musicians and things like that. But I was told that I need to contact his people, that he may be interested. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So
that would be cool.
Yeah,
I do love his mic, man. I mean, I've used the RE20, I've used that Shure mic, but I love this one. It's fantastic.
Now, I bet you're going through a DBX 286. Is I'm going to guess?
Negative.
Or some sort of, no.
I'm using the MDX 4600.
Ah. Okay.
Although I know the DBX is good though, but I wanted multiple channels, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I run my Skype through it as well, so whenever I'm doing interviews and stuff like that, it's got the gate on everybody's nice background noise. Sometimes that happens.
It's the MDX. What is it for?
4600 Behringer.
Okay. Yeah. That's the one. It's like 4 channels of compression and limiting and that whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I've heard some people have issues with the, sometimes you'll get a lemon is what I've heard. I don't know. I mean, I've never experienced it with any of those, but everybody I know that's had one for the most part liked them, and then there's been, like I said, just a few stories periodically. But no, it's great because you can run 4 channels through it, which is nice. It really does make your sound pretty spectacular. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what other fun field? I see you have blinking lights in the background. What else you got going on gear-wise?
Yeah, you're talking about the blue ones back there? Let's see if I can point right there.
Well, that's a router. That one.
Yeah, is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about something else?
I see. What's you got the little green blinkies here. I'll have to put you on the screen permanently here.
You're talking about the whenever I talk, there's green blinking lights?
Yeah, I see the MDX right here.
Oh, you're talking about this thing.
Yeah. What's above? Is that a PreSonus kind of thing, or what do you got?
That is a PreSonus. I use that as a second sound card, and also for when I'm like writing and composing music, I use that to go back through. That's the beauty of the Thunderbolt. It's the multi-directional. And then, then was my Behringer right there. And then I use the Mackie 1202 mixer. And then I've got the Heil and this pop filter. Pop filters are very nice because, otherwise you're popping things. But I'll tell you what, man, I need a better arm. This arm is not the greatest, and I need a shock mount because as you can hear, one little bump, man.
Yeah, I troubleshot a hum for the longest time, and I'm like, it's one of those things that, number one, the audience probably wouldn't have heard it, but I'm in a quiet room doing this, going, I hear a hum, and I'm troubleshooting, and I'm changing out chords and this and that, and I'm like, what is that? And here I had a different desk at the time, and I stuck my computer in the desk, like it had a little cubby hole for it. Well, the computer has a thing that spins, and that makes a vibration. The vibrations went right up the wood into the arm, and I didn't have a shock mount. And sure enough, I just happened to like move something. Wow, refocus, Mr. Camera. There we go. And I just happened to move the computer, and all of a sudden the hum went away, and I'm like,
yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. And I put the thing back in the cubby hole, and I was like, oh, you are kidding it. It was just the vibrations from the computer on the desk going up into the arm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I had this yet. I think that's what might have inspired this. But I was like, yeah, okay, that's, because my computer's ready to die, I think, at this point. I have a hard drive that every now and then just makes all sorts of interesting noises, and I'm like, and that's when you go, how long have I had this computer? And you're like, really? Has it been that long already?
Yeah.
So that time flies when you're having fun.
I know what you mean. I'm using, an older iMac for basically Google Hangouts. I use it for Skype and that kind of thing too, and then I've got it connected with that mini DisplayPort thing, so I can use it as a second screen if I want. And then I've got the newer iMac that, that's even over a year old now. I got it last year and a half ago now. But I only use Mac now. I used to be a PC guy, and I used to have fun with them actually. But after switching over to Mac, I was like, yeah, this is just easier for what I do. It's easier, not for gaming.
Yeah, I've got a little Mac Mini that I use just because I needed to learn GarageBand so I could help people and that whole 9 yards. And I've got I need to update my ScreenFlow. I know they just came out with a new version, and
ooh, nice.
It's like well, from what I understand, if you have the right connectors, you can now make a screen, like you can screen capture your phone. And I went, now you got my attention, because we need to make a here's how you subscribe to a podcast video. And I was going to do it with just, screenshots, because you can take a screenshot of your, I think if you hold down the circle, whatever that button is on the front, and the on-off button at the same time, you can take a screenshot. It actually makes a little picture sound. And I thought, well, I'll just take screenshots of, here, click here, search here, blah, 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 and then just throw it into PowerPoint, do a little voiceover, and presto, instant how to subscribe to a podcast stuff.
Yeah.
I see Dan saying backup now. Yes, Backblaze is my backup choice. Yeah. So, and then anybody have any insights on? I'm going to dump McAfee as a virus. I've had them forever, and in what is today? The 31st. In 9 days. February 8th is my my birthday, and I know that because that's when my virus runs out. Every year I have to renew on my birthday, and so I'm going to switch to something. I just know it takes up a lot of room and a lot of memory, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be, my stepson who's 18 is like the ultimate geek, said something that began with a K. I forget the name, but I was like, I need to find a super hardware geek and go, what's the best virus protection? So,
truthfully, I don't even know anymore, because using Mac.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. That's the nice thing about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I used to go on to PC World, though.
Yeah.
I go to their website, and I just kind of look around for the best reviews, and, they changed it seems like, few months.
That's what I did. I actually I downloaded a trial of Avast, because they actually have a free version that actually just does virus protection. I'm like, well, I could do that in Windows Defender for malware and all that other fun-filled stuff. Yeah, that's what he's saying. Yes, I have AVG for years. I've heard that one too.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a bad. I just McAfee just likes to add other things that I'm like, no, I don't need this and I don't need that, and it's kind of a pain in the butt.
They seem to go up and down though. You know, it's kind of like cell phone service. You know,
Yeah.
like a couple of years, all of a sudden this one's better, and then this one's really bad, and then they switch, and they just keep going back and forth. So, but yeah, I agree. I love Macs too. I just really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Barbara says I got one backup, got 4 terabytes yesterday for less than $150. Oh yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, nice.
Well, I went and bought a external USB.
Cool.
Partly for that reason. When things started going weird, I'm like, I have Backblaze, but and it was cool. You plug it in, drag and drop, and it was yeah. I think I have 3 terabytes, and it was around $100. It wasn't so.
I use CrashPlan, by the way, for online backup. Yeah, now I know there's a bunch of services, but that was the one I liked because they just for the features and some of the stuff I was looking for. But I've been really happy with them, and the nice thing about that is that it backs everything up online as well, and it'll actually act up as a backup to if you have an external hard drive. It's a nice little interface for that too. So yeah, it's fantastic because if your hard drive goes out, or if God forbid your place burns down or something gets robbed or whatever, that way it's not just like all in one location either.
That's nice. It. You need something offline because yes, I have a terabyte backup drive here, but it's like you said, if your building burns, great. Now you've lost 2 copies of your backup, and that's why you need something. Yeah, that's why I use Backblaze. Backblaze will back up my hard drive, but also back up any external hard drive that I plug in. And I'm like going, I look at that as a business plan. I'm like going, wait a minute, because I just added 3 terabytes of space, and you're still charging me $5 a month. I'm like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But that's like the whole thing now. Is the whole cloud backup. There's I see somebody mentioned Microsoft. They have a terabyte now on Microsoft OneDrive. That is something I'm loving because I can actually open up. It's not fun, but I can open up a spreadsheet now on my phone. Like I have a spreadsheet where I put in how many calories I've eaten and how much I've exercised and blah blah. Yeah. And so it's nice that I can have that there. And I was like, can I do this on my phone? And I'm like, sure enough, it's like, hold on. And it opened up, and it's fun trying to type in a little cell that's now this big, but it's like it works.
That's cool.
Updates. So, anything exciting coming up on? How far ahead do you plan with ProfitCast, or do you just kind of like, is it Friday and you're like going, I think I'll talk about this on Tuesday? Which I'm in a lot of times. Monday
night. No, I'm just kidding. It really depends on the week. There are times where I plan things ahead because I'm ready for that. I've got interviews lined up and that kind of thing. Sometimes it literally comes, like this last week, I had planned to do a solo show, and I had one thing I wanted to talk about, but for some reason the actual content did not come together until Monday morning. It was crazy. It's just like one of those moments where like, why isn't this coming together? And then all of a sudden, boom, and then there was episode 32. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's up and down. I kind of work like that though. Like I'm always planning ahead as much as I can, but sometimes it's just not ready until, when the.
Well, and I've had it where I'll record something. My favorite is, and I wish I could break this habit, I'll record something on Thursday because that's typically like my podcast day, and that way I can have Saturday to do something else, and then inevitably on Saturday I will re-record whatever I did on Thursday because I've come up with something else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's killing me. It's
See, and that's where you go, okay, now it's time for 2 shows a week, Yeah. And I mean, I've been doing that where I'll add an extra show in a week and just go, whatever, I'm just going to do this, because why not? What's the harm in doing extra content? And at first I thought, well, I don't know if the community's going to want this much. Is this going to be too much? Are they going to want to listen to another show? And you know what? Everybody jumped right in on it still too. So I'm like, okay, and one of the questions I have, and I don't ever want to put this to the test in a way that would be, a pain in the butt for people, but to find out how many episodes a week could I do before it becomes annoying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Just kind of in general wondering this.
Keith and the Girl do a daily show, and they're a show that I pop in and out of. And when I subscribe to them, I just feel bad because, while I've been listening to these other shows, I come back and I'm like, oh wow, there's 3 more Keith and the Girl show to listen to, and I'll start, or I look and I've listened to, 25% of all 3, and I always like, wow, they're putting out this content, and because that's my problem, I listen to too many, In fact, if I look at my phone right now, probably half of them have the little exclamation point because I haven't listened to them in a while.
Yeah.
Which is always kind of like, should I unsubscribe from that? Or I have channels, so I have like a church channel, I have a podcast channel, I have a marketing channel, and then I have a health channel, and now I have a sports channel. And it's always kind of interesting. You go and you're like, wow, I haven't been listening to health in a while because everything's got the exclamation point.
Yeah.
You've not listened to this podcast, and we've quit downloading it for you.
90 seconds.
There's Blog Talk
There it
Radio.
is. It's time for us to get. But I'll tell you one thing is that if I didn't have to do show notes, I know that was one of the first topics we talked about. I would do a 5-day-a-week podcast. I would do it because getting behind the microphone is just the best thing in the world, and I could just come in here every day and do that. But if I didn't have to do the stupid show notes and blog post, there you go.
Yeah. Let me see something real quick. I always forget. Because even when Blog Talk Radio goes away, it's like
60 seconds.
Oh, 60. Sorry.
Well, I could actually hear. We'll mute her.
Yeah.
I must have lost.
Such a nice voice, though.
It does. It's awesome that way.
Fantastic.
Transcription.
What they need to do is they need to turn it to like a Gollum voice, you know?
Right.
60 seconds. Yes. No.
Yoda, right?
Yeah, we can do Yoda.
There is no try. Only 2.
35.
You have 60. $1 a minute. That's the problem. So if you do an hour-long show, you're looking at $60 to have it transcribed, and then you got to still copy and paste that to make legitimate show notes. And I'm like,
What about hiring a VA to do the show notes and the blog, actually publishing the blog post?
Yeah, that would. Well, let me see. I
don't know. I mean, I hear about it, but
see, because the one guy I checked, he wanted like $175 an episode. Shownotesguy.com.
That's a lot. Guy's banking.
And I remember thinking, I guess if you're doing like the business thing, I mean, there are people that are, let's see, here we go, rates. So I'm at shownotesguy.com. He came across my radar this week. For a 30-minute, 20 to 40 minutes, and a 60-minute, and a per minute upcharge. Okay, I love people that make you go. I just want a number. The basic package is this. Great. Can you tell me how much? Here we go at the very bottom. 30 minutes, $199.
Whoa.
Up to 1,100 words. SEO friendly. They're in a PDF format. They're accurate and they're professional. See, that's where I'm like, I can have it transcribed for 60. I'm still like, I don't have that kind of budget at this point. But yeah, if I'm missing, so the basic package includes a long-form, deep, SEO-friendly, journalist-style article written about your podcast. You'll have plenty of keywords to play off of, and you'll have an average of 1,200 to 1,400 words per article for about a 30-minute podcast, and 1,900 to 2,500 words per article for a 60-minute, based on past performance. But they want, now I don't know if that's a month. It can't be a month because that'd be 200, but that's, it just says, here, let me throw this in the chat room. You know what? I'll type that. That's good. And that's where you need like a VA.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm VA illiterate. Like I have no idea. Obviously in many cases English is a second language over there, and you always kind of wonder how well are they going to be able to write show notes. And I'm just
I know you can get specific content creators or what do they call them? Copywriters or content? I don't know. There's some kind of a term like that, but where they actually do specialize in that, even if they are from another country. But they cost more. For what I've heard. See, and I like these ideas. No one's going to punch. Thanks, Ryan. No one's going to punch you in the face for not doing show notes. I got to wonder because we talked about this in the beginning that show notes add value for Google, and show notes add value for somebody who wants to come and read through the stuff, and then of course that's where your linking comes in if you have affiliates and stuff. So I mean, there's definitely value to it. It's just a matter of, like, I'm not kidding. I don't know if you've seen my show notes, but they're not that great, right? There's a few things in there. It takes me almost 2 hours per week to write my show notes, and it's a one take, 30 minutes, go through the podcast episode, and I can edit my show pretty quickly too, because I'm faster at editing, right? But I'm thinking, man, I could save 2 hours and do 4 more episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, just to listen to the show is 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? I'm listening at 2x speed, and and that's just to make bullet points. And so what? Wait a minute, I typed in your website wrong. Podcast Universe.
Yeah, Joe, I thought so too, by the way. That's kind of why I was told that, do show notes, is because that's the only way for Google to find out what you're talking about.
That's kind of it, which there are those that could argue and say, well, what about social media and Facebook? And I'm like, yeah, but on the other hand, when you do a search for, like we had a discussion a couple weeks ago, do you need a website? Because somebody had there was a Facebook flaming war, and the joke was, well, I went to listen to the guy's podcast, except I couldn't find it because he doesn't have a website. But your show notes are not. Let me see here. The secret strategy to growing your podcast.
Do you like that headline?
I do like that, man.
I'm working on headlines right now. That's another thing I've discovered.
What are you talking about, man? Your show notes are awesome.
Well, but I mean, they're not like, compared to, like I was telling you Daniel's earlier, compared to Daniel's, I mean, those are awesome.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I'm going to do that I'm going to take from you that you do is your newsletter is not just the show notes. It's you, like, in a little paragraph, I think. I could be wrong, but it looks like you just go, hey, in this week's episode we do blah, 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 and here's how you're going to benefit, yada, yada, yada. Click here to do the link. As opposed to, here, let me send you a bunch of bullet points that don't make any sense unless you listen to the podcast. Because I know when I see that, I'm like, oh, cool, and it makes me click, which is dumb because I'm subscribed anyway, but I'm like, oh, I'll listen to that now. And
yeah. Well, you know what that is that's written up as it is actually the beginning of the blog post. Changed up a little bit for an actual email, but I write that in email format. So it's me writing the beginning of the blog post as a personal message to the listener, and then that's what I actually use for the email. I'll personalize it more on the email, of course, than I do just on the blog post. But so yeah, it is. So it's pretty much the same thing, but it's written for an email.
The email.
Rather
See,
than
that's
just
I started trying to write my show notes like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll just write it like it's an email, but it is. Then you get to that weird line of like, well, if I'm giving all the content in, text, are they going to then listen? And I'm like, I don't know. I think the people that are coming here to listen are just looking for the player. Maybe.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting poll. Do you, if all the content's on the website, would you read it? Because the more I read, most people don't read. They skim. They're looking at, hence the importance of headlines and things of that nature.
So here's something interesting. You asked me if I was going to websites earlier, and I just thought of this, but like I said, the ones that have the really detailed show notes, this is why I'm mixed on this one, where it's like detailed show notes are amazing, but then the ones that have the detailed show notes, I find myself going, oh, I'm sucked into what they're talking about, so I read the whole post. Then I realize I'm out of time, and I never end up getting to the podcast episode. So I never listened. And so that's why I kind of am in that. I'm more leaning towards give them enough that they know what you're going to talk about, but if they really want to know what you talked about, they need to listen. Because, otherwise, why? What's the point of listening?
Yeah, they have in the chat there, they're talking about making a template for show notes. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Have all your, links at the bottom, subscribe to the podcast, blah, blah, blah.
Hey, Addy, is that what you guys normally do as well? Isn't that kind of the style that you use, is having that template where you have everything already written out and you just change a few things? I do somewhat of a template, but it's still too manual for me. I need some of that if this then that kind of stuff going on. Get Christian to set me up.
I used to do the old and now there's one for a Mac, the whole short key, I type in this and you type in that kind of thing. I used to have I took all the code for all the buttons to subscribe and all that and just did that, and then anytime I got to the end of the post, I would just switch to the text mode in WordPress and type in my stuff and watch it type it out for me, and off we're going. But it'd make even more sense just to make a template.
Yeah.
Just have it in that drop-down thing. I should investigate that. I know it's not that hard. I know I think there's a plugin that will make you walk it through and just say it's a template, and then it shows up, and it's like, really, in the end, it's not that hard to just do yourself. Let's see, my newsletter rarely has anything to do with the episodes I send. Other info. There you go.
I'm actually working on trying to figure out ways to do that too, because I send out my episode, but then I'd like to have like a Thursday email that basically has just some additional information. But I'm still trying to figure out what am I going to do? Is it going to be like a daily tip of the week, or is it just going to be?
See, I thought about doing. I know in Aweber you can start a, an email and then save it. And I thought maybe what I should do is just start one, save it, and then during the week, any links I find, any articles, podcasting news, things like that, just make a quick little, hey, I read this article, it's really cool, blah blah blah. Here's the link. Save as a draft. And then on Wednesday, here's another great article I found, blah blah blah. You might find this, blah blah blah. Here you go. And then the last one is, oh, by the way, the new episode is out. We talk about blah blah. Here's that. And then just send it on Tuesday. And just kind of use it as a draft folder during the week, and then you kind of have. I guess it depends on what you want to do. I mean, obviously, the more email you send, the more chance of that you're keeping your brand in front of them, and
yeah,
that whole 9 yards. But yeah, text expander. There we go.
And then was it type it for me for Mac? Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, those are handy. I mean, that's the way when if you have a brand new podcast. And you're going to submit to all the directories, get your RSS feed, get your, all the stuff they're going to ask you for 8,000 times, and get those in short keys. And you can go through if you go to Podcast 411, the directory of directories, you can go through the ones that pertain to you in about 5 minutes. It's really not that bad. Evernote is another. I've just started really
love Evernote.
Investigating Evernote. I've had it for years, and I'm now I'm reading a book. Ryan actually had a link on his website about an Evernote book, and I'm like, you know what? I need to dig deeper into this. And man, it's that thing does some really cool stuff. It's nothing really crazy. It's just it's the fact that everywhere I go, I was doing something last night on my phone. I'm like, can I send this to Evernote? I'm like, click, click, click. Yep, sure can. There you go, solved. So.
Hey, yeah. Addy, I think we're gonna have to get you on to teach us how to do show notes in the short and effective way.
Yes.
I mean, I'm reading some of these thoughts here, and I'm going, yeah, okay.
2 to 3 pairs. That's what we type as only. 2 to 3 sentences, short and straight to the point. Yeah.
And
that's where if you can do that up front. I forget the book by Ken. Oh, I should know this. Something Communication. The guy that does the Michael Hyatt. That's gonna drive me nuts. But it's a thing I read, and you boil down your presentation to one sentence, is what his thing is, and then everything in your presentation should either it has to do with that, and it really gets you laser focused. And man, when I read that book, I'm like, this is a guy. I mean, I do presentations every day, and I was like, wow, it's kind of like kind of common sense stuff, but Ken Davis, there we go. I couldn't remember the guy's name.
Oh yeah.
He's the guy that does the SCORE conference, and it's basically SCORE in a book, Secrets of Dynamic Communication. And that's where, if you think about it, if you came up with this is the topic for the show, and then everything you do, every point you make or whatever, is that, and then you could write a paragraph and go that route. Like on Monday School of Podcasting, it's inspired by somebody at the Cleveland Podcasters Meetup, which is, what if I don't know what I want to podcast about, but I want a podcast? Like, I want to do something. What can I do? And so I happen to. It's one of those cases where your life filters in what you do. My son right now is my stepson is 18, and guy's a genius. He's got Ohio State's accepted him. Purdue. He has an invite from Purdue. He's got an interview with Princeton. I'm like, really? Wow, you're a genius. But I remember when he was in that stage of, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I remember when I'm still in that stage. So, at that point, what do? You take general classes, and then you figure out your major later. And I was like, okay, that's a podcast episode that'll, it's kind of for beginners, but I'm like, there's some things to learn there, because so many people, like, there's a guy in our Cleveland Podcasters Meetup, super nice guy, he's been planning his podcast for 3 years.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's a little excessive.
Planning it.
Yeah, he knows he wants to do it. His thing, and that'll be another episode. So many people, imposter syndrome. Why would somebody listen to me? And then he just thinks he has a horrible voice. And I'm like, and we pulled it up. I said, let me show you some unique voices. So I went over and Shrink Rack Radio, the guy's a friend of mine, Dr. Dave, and Dr. Dave just has this kind of raspy today, and you know it's Dr. Dave the minute you hear him. And then if you go listen to Geek News Central with Todd Cochran, he doesn't have the, he sounds like Todd Cochran. And so but if you're used to, in a world, that guy, we don't sound like that guy. And I'm like, but if you bring the content, so, but it's weird because he's just petrified, and I'm like, dude.
That goes back to being the best you, man.
Yeah, exactly. I said
else.
Yeah. So that's going to be part of it. It's just like, here are some things you can do while you're trying to figure out what the heck you want to be when you grow up. You still need to learn how to, work a microphone and hit record. Let's work on those, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do later and go from there. So
I agree.
But that's the plan for this week's School of Podcasting, which I'll be starting here in a bit.
Nice. I like this. Don't grow up. Problem solved.
That's it.
Yeah. All right.
My
here's my lightsaber to prove that I've not grown up. So
Well, my favorite thing, do I have it? I used to have a plaque that said life is too important to be taken seriously.
Nice.
And I'm just like, or my other one was I'm going to be young at heart until I'm too old to change. And my wife asked me a couple weeks ago, she goes, well, like, when do you think you're going to, stop podcasting? And I go, I'm not. I said, I'm pretty sure. I said, when I did my survey, I said, I got one person in my audience that's over the age of 70 that listens to my show. I said, I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that's, surfing the internet on his phone or whatever the heck's going on when I'm 80. I want to be that guy. That hopefully will keep my mind sharp. But I want to be that guy. And I said, so, I'll be, Building a Better Dave, episode number 1056, and I'll be telling people to get off my lawn.
I've been podcasting for 56 years.
Yes, back in the day, we would have to crank the electricity to turn the,
We had microphones back then. Now we just click our cheeks.
Oh, exactly. Well, now they have a thing that I went, no thank you. I saw it on the news last night. You put a chip the size of a piece of rice in your hand, and then you go up and it lets you in the door at the business. And I'm like, I'm not putting any microchips in my hand. I'm like, no.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I'm like, thank you. But I could see where, that's where I'm like, all my Bible teaching went right into my head. I'm like, who? It's the mark of the beast.
You're right about though with the older, because I've got a friend that he doesn't look like it, but he's 70 years old and he's playing basketball with us still.
Nice.
I mean, he's running up and down the court, going crazy.
I want to be that dude.
Yeah, he looks like he's 50. He finally just told me, he's like, I might start. I think I might be getting just a little too old to be playing basketball. Like, you think you might be?
Maybe.
That's amazing.
Randy has a great example. Have you ever heard Scott Farrell? Scott Farrell sounds. Do you remember Froggy? This might be before your time. Do you remember Froggy and the Little Rascals?
Little Rascals. Yeah.
Okay. Because Froggy used to sound like, and that's basically Scott Farrell.
Yeah.
All right, today we're going to be talking Pats and Seahawks. All right, on the Farrell Show. And I'm like, how did this guy make it in radio? Because the minute you hear him, because it's hilarious. He's on CBS now. He used to be on satellite. And I was listening to the Jim Rome Show again, and they're like, Farrell, weekdays at 3. And then, so you have this super smooth, deep voice guy.
Yeah.
And then you got, all right, this weekend we're going to be done. And I'm like, I think somebody's strangling him. You might want to check on that. But,
I'm being tortured every week. It's like you actually get a video of him and there's a noose around his neck, and he's just going to town.
Yeah, that's it.
Don't stop talking or this thing's gone.
That's right. Peter flailing. Yeah. Awesome.
Chair's gonna get kicked.
That's it.
Man.
Well, speaking of doing live, I have to go to the potty. So I think this is where we're
That's
going.
the beauty of live is I've had tea and water, and all of a sudden it's I know what you mean. So
yeah, it's time. So thank you, chat room, as always. I definitely have some, and this is, like I said, you can go to the chat room and scroll up because there's actually some gold in there. Thank you, Addie.
Yeah,
Addie, we should have you come on and talk about, like, do you just use Google keywords to find your keywords? She's like, I can't reveal my secrets, or Ben will, she needs the desk again, or
Ben doesn't have to know.
Yeah, I haven't played with Google keywords in a long time. their keyword tool. I should go over and revisit that. So, but anyway, well, Brian, thank you, my man. I really do appreciate it.
No, this was fun. I got to tell, like I said earlier, it's like live stuff is. I used to do live stuff all the time, and first time I ever did it, I bombed, man, and then it just becomes this little addicting thing, and I miss live, so it's fun to be back on this. But thank you, appreciate it. And I don't do video very often, so this is fun too.
Yeah, no, you look good, man.
Got a face for radio, so you know. No.
Are you gonna be at NMX?
I would like to.
Yeah.
I don't know yet.
It's a chunk of change.
It is right now. That's kind of the thing.
You can earn a pass.
Really?
Schoolofpodcasting.com/PAR. Podcast Award Reviewer is what that stands for.
Can I review my own podcast?
No.
Just kidding.
Yeah, okay. And you can't review your category.
Okay.
But if you review 4 categories, now we're not going to fly you. You got to get yourself there, but you can get yourself in.
Forget it.
I know. Forget it. And from what I
fly.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's about 16 hours of work because you got to listen to like 4. But if you're interested, we have a few more slots available. So.
Well, I love that kind of stuff anyway, reviewing podcasts, and I kind of do that for fun, which is really bizarre.
Yeah, you're not really you're not voting, but you're going through and saying like, okay, do they have an iTunes thing? Check. Do they have an RSS? Check. Do they have this? Check. So we're gonna go, and then based on the check marks, there are points assigned to the yes or no questions. So it's there. From what I understand, there are some mildly subjective things that we check, but for the most part, it's just yes or no. And
I'm gonna do that because I want to get out there. I really do.
Yeah, I'm worried because I think it's gonna be almost too big. When I hear, we have double the registrations already.
Wow.
And it's not April yet. I'm like, wow, that's going to be so. But and then the fact that it's next to NAB, which from what I hear, I just realized I'm missing Daniel J. Lewis. It's a podcast. I can listen later. But I guess the NAB show is just you don't understand how big it is until you see it, and then you're like, yeah. So that'll be fun. But all right, my man. Well, yeah, anybody that wants to, don't forget, newmediashow.com is where Daniel J. Lewis is being interviewed as we speak.
Yeah, very exciting.
So I will check him out after I return from the restroom. So, awesome.
Thanks, Dave, guys. This was fun. Yeah, thank you guys in the chat room. Thank you all. It was fun. Thanks for having me on.
All right, we'll see you later.
Enjoyable. Have a good one.
Yep, see you.